top story of the hour is from Connor Sen saying that the next great job churn is already starting. And in a great picture for this piece, this dystopian banner from the streets of San Francisco, Artisans, which is the name of the company that's promoting the AI tool, Artisans won't complain about work-life balance. And it's this picture of a presumably woman that's supposed to look like a robot employee. And it's all about the start of the job churn and what types of jobs are starting to be affected by artificial intelligence. And I had a good quote on this from a random person on X, formerly Twitter. Quote, "The future was supposed to free up our time from work so we could spend it on higher pursuits. Instead, we created AI that makes art while we all work." And that is kind of the weird dystopian moment that we're in. AIs of today are pretty good at creating new logos. They're fairly good at making cartoon artwork for advertisements. They're pretty good at impersonating humans and writing a poem for you or summarizing an article for you. They're not great at flipping burgers at the local McDonald's. They are not too good at driving your car for you or restocking the shelves at Walmart. And I just find it interesting that, hey, this is where the job disruption is going to come, therefore, is maybe not so much in the low-income jobs that everybody thought were going to be wiped out, right? 2 decades ago when everybody was talking about raising the minimum wage in certain states, the conversation was all about, well, nobody's going to be working at McDonald's anymore because robots are going to do that job. Instead, it's, we're not going to need law clerks in legal offices anymore because I can have an AI tool that just summarizes 15 legal cases for me and gives me a pretty good estimation of it. Or we're not going to need graphic designers as much as we used to because I can have an AI tool that will design 15 different logos for me and I can just choose the one I like best. I don't know. It's just, it's very interesting to me where this is going, but that's where the churn seems to be coming from.
But the article makes, what these researchers did is kind of, I'm skimming the paper here as you talk. What they ask is, how disruptive is generative AI likely to be? Are we seeing any evidence that what happened to manufacturing in the 70s and 80s, the massive, I'll call it hollowing out, even though that's a little bit dramatic, there was a huge shift from manufacturing to services over the past several decades.
And you can blame part of that on globalization, but a lot of it on automation.
Yeah, they don't really get into that. That's really the key point. Technological, because it happened all over the world.
Sure.
We tend to lament that we don't make anything here anymore. Every advanced country would make a similar, would have
point.
Similar complaints. So is generative AI, these researchers ask, I mean, the Connor Sen article was like almost as long as the research paper, so I just went to the research paper. Now, this is not peer-reviewed, meaning they put it out there, but no publication has accepted it yet. I don't know. There may be some big problem. So one of the problems with looking at something that's not peer-reviewed, these people run to something called Social Science Research Network, where people just post their work before it gets accepted by a peer-reviewed journal. The peer-reviewed journal process is a pain. I get that. But all the data here could be made up. I'm not saying that it is, but this could be
nobody's
total.
Reviewed it.
This could be total BS. But it's nevertheless an interesting approach. They ask, what if the same thing that happened to manufacturing, due to, as you point out, automation and other factors, happens to white-collar jobs that generative AI can gradually replace? What is that likely to do to unemployment? Say here in Boston, which they talk about, in which this article covers, where unemployment has gone up from about 3.5% to a little over 4%. Is that due to generative AI? Very hard to tease that out, which is where I run into some problems with using this article to make policy or draw conclusions. But nevertheless, the authors of this particular paper make the interesting point that a big shift away from the white-collar jobs supporting finance and technology and other industries could be underway as generative AI replaces what many entry-level type jobs, people that filled entry-level type jobs have done historically. What are the political implications? What are the demographic implications? They're not necessarily, they're bad probably for us here in the Northeast.
Yeah, it's a fascinating theory, right? Are the same strengths that made incomes and property values in areas like San Francisco, areas like Boston shoot through the roof over the last quarter century? Are those same factors going to be the one that lead those same areas into some sort of higher unemployment, lower income scenario?
On the extreme end of it, is the Boston DC corridor going to become like the Rust Belt of the 2030s? The authors of this study say that the downstream effects, I'll just read their conclusion very briefly. Downstream effects of generative AI appear more benign than the downstream adjustments, which is a euphemism for the enormous displacements that cost people their jobs and livelihoods and cause them to have to move or something. Far more benign, they expect, than the adjustments due to the manufacturing shock. So no new Rust Belt, providing we adapt. Make investments in people, make it easier to switch jobs and stuff like that. So there is a role for policy here.
Yeah, it's been a story that's been nagging at me all year is, and I'm focused on Boston, but you can make the same argument of New York or DC, the whole corridor, or parts of the West Coast as well. But in a market like Boston, which is so dominated by education, dominated by life sciences, finance, is some combination of government cuts plus artificial intelligence going to make the Boston job market look fundamentally different than it did last decade or so? I think it's really tough to tease out an answer to that, but theoretically, it's easy to kind of stack those bricks for a very different labor market in the Boston area, given cuts to government work, grants.
Would solve the
pressure
housing
on
crisis
education.
on the bright side.
It would solve the housing crisis rather rapidly.